In the autumn of 1888, London's East End became a hunting ground for one of history's most infamous killers, Jack the Ripper. His brutal murders shook the city, leaving fear in his wake, and a mystery that endures to this day. But who was Jack the Ripper? Why was he never caught? And why do his crimes continue to fascinate us over a century later? In today's videos, we'll take a deep dive into the case of Jack the Ripper. We'll explore the murders, examine the investigation, and consider suspects. And by the end, we'll ask the ultimate question. Will we ever know the true identity of Jack the Ripper? What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Or if you're new here, welcome to the channel. My name is Stone Rock. And as you can see, some changes here. Some changes. New year, you know, shaved off the beard. Different camera angle. We're trying this camera angle here. More looking straight at me. As opposed to off to the side. We'll see how that works. I've also got a green screen set up on my ceiling. It just drops down behind me. We're gonna use that for gaming. I don't know how I can work it into this stuff. We will figure that out. But anyways, welcome to 2025. How's it going? So I got some issues going on here. The internet's all weird. I don't know what's going on. Spectrum, they were supposed to have been out two days ago at this point. They never showed up. They're supposed to be out sometime today. I'm doubting that they're going to show up again. And it's a whole pain to deal with. So I'm not able to upload. But we're still going to make videos. We're going to have videos ready for when we can upload. And we will just go from there. Hopefully the algorithm doesn't tank me. That's the only thing I'm worried about at the moment. But we're going to get into it. To understand the Jack the Ripper case, we must first understand Whitechapel in 1888. The East End of London was a far cry from the wealthier parts of the city. Whitechapel was overcrowded, filled with narrow alleyways, and home to the city's poorest residents. At this time, many women in Whitechapel had no choice but to turn to prostitution to survive. With no social safety nets and few opportunities for work, they lived in constant poverty, often sleeping in workhouses or on the streets. This made them vulnerable targets for violence. The police force in Whitechapel struggled to maintain order, crime was rampant, and resources were limited. The streets were dangerous, especially at night, and it was in this chaotic environment that Jack the Ripper began his killing spree. Between August and November of 1888, 5 women were brutally murdered in Whitechapel. These 5 women are often referred to as the canonical 5, and they are generally accepted as victims of Jack the Ripper. Let's begin with the first known victim. Mary Ann Nichols, known as Polly, was murdered on August 31st, 1888. She was found in Bucks Row, her throat slashed and her abdomen mutilated. The violence of the attack shocked the local community and led the police to believe that this was no ordinary crime. Just over a week later, on September 8th, Annie Chapman was killed in similar fashion. Her body was found in a backyard of 29 Hanbury Street. Like Polly Nichols, her throat was slashed and her abdomen had been viciously mutilated. However, with Chapman, there was an additional horror. Her womb had been removed. This led to speculation that the killer had some knowledge of anatomy, perhaps a doctor or a butcher. On the night of September 30th, Jack the Ripper struck again, but this time he murdered 2 women on the same night. Elizabeth Stride was found in Dutfield's yard, her throat slashed, but her body otherwise untouched. Many believe that the killer was interrupted during the attack, which explains why there were no further mutilations. Later that same night, the killer claimed another victim, Catherine Eddowes. Her body was found in Meter Square, her face and body brutally mutilated. The killer had removed her kidney and left it at the scene. It's possible that after being interrupted by Stride's murder, the Ripper sought another victim to satisfy his bloodlust. The final canonical victim was Mary Jane Kelly, who was murdered on November 9th, 1888, in her own room at Miller's Court. Kelly's murder was by far the most horrific. Her body was mutilated beyond recognition, and her internal organs were scattered around the room. The sheer brutality of the attack suggested that the Ripper had taken his time, and he was in the privacy of Mary's lodging. The murders of the Canonical Five shocked the police. The level of violence was unprecedented, and the fact that the killer was able to evade capture despite such heinous crimes led to fear and panic throughout the East End. The investigation into the murders was one of the largest ever undertaken by Metropolitan Police at the time. Inspector Frederick Aberline, one of the force's most experienced detectives, led the hunt for the Ripper. But despite his best efforts, the police were hampered by the lack of modern forensic techniques. There were no fingerprints, no DNA testing, and no CCTV footage, just witness accounts and gut instinct. Complicating the matters, the streets of Whitechapel were filled with criminals, drunks, and vagrants, making it difficult for the police to get reliable information. Several witnesses claimed to have seen a suspicious man near the crime scene, but the descriptions varied widely, and none were able to provide a concrete identification. The media frenzy surrounding the case added even more pressure. As each new victim was discovered, newspapers across London sensationalized the story, with some even giving the killer his infamous name, Jack the Ripper. But perhaps the most notorious part of the investigation was a series of letters sent to the police and the press. The most famous of these was the Dear Boss letter, in which the writer claimed to be the killer and taunted the police with details of the murders. The letter signed Jack the Ripper, including a chilling promise to clip the lady's ears off in the next murder, shortly after Catherine Eddowes was found with part of her ear missing, adding credibility to the letter. But was the letter really written by the murderer, or was it a hoax designed to mock the police? To this day, no one knows for certain. I remember it was a show, it was more recent. It was the nephew of like H.H. Holmes or something like that. And he went over to Britain, and there was a suspicion that H.H. Holmes was Jack the Ripper. And honestly, like I kind of buy into this because H.H. Holmes was over there at the same time. They had handwriting analysis come up, and they said that the Dear Boss letter used very American terminology. It wasn't something that the Brits were using at the time, and that it came off as very American. So like, that could have just been for the show. It could have been because this dude was like the nephew of H.H. Holmes or something like that, who is a infamous serial killer here in the States. I think everybody in the world knows his name. But like, I kind of buy into that theory because he wasn't active here during the time of the Ripper overseas. And a lot of the stories about how the Ripper looked match H.H. Holmes. It's kind of cool to think about. I really kind of buy into that. I like that theory. I'm not saying it was H.H. Holmes. Obviously, I'm just speculating on my part. I have no proof for anything, but it's just speculation, just a theory. That's it. That's all I wanted to throw in there. Sorry, tangent.
Hey, that's pretty good.
Yeah, no, it's just kind of how even like handwriting experts, now they could have been paid by the show, but even handwriting experts are like, yeah, this is definitely American terminology. So who knows? You know, it could have just been a sailor over there at the time. I don't know. You know, I don't know. Over the years, hundreds of suspects have been suggested as the true identity of Jack the Ripper. Some are more credible than others, but no definitive proof has ever surfaced. One of the most widely discussed suspects is the Montague John Druitt, a barrister and school teacher who was found dead in the River Thames just weeks after the Ripper murder. Druitt's suicide, combined with the circumstantial evidence, has led some to believe that he was the Ripper, and that his death marked the end of the killings. Another popular suspect is Aaron Kosminski, a Polish immigrant who worked in a barber shop in Whitechapel. Kosminski was later committed to an asylum, and some Ripperologists believe that he was the killer due to his erratic behavior and proximity to the crime scene. In recent years, DNA evidence found on one of the victim's shawls has linked Kosminski to descendants through the
I don't know.
In recent years, DNA evidence found on one of the victim's shawls was linked to Kosminski's descendants. Through the validity of the evidence has been hotly debated. Now, here's my thing on that. Just because his DNA was found does not mean he was the Ripper. These were ladies of the night, to put it politely, I guess. I mean, we could call them prostitutes. I don't like to use that term personally. We'll call them ladies of the night, friends of the evening, if you will. These were working girls. They did whatever they could to make money. It's not out of the question that Kosminski could have visited one of them and left some DNA evidence behind. Doesn't mean he was the Ripper. It just means that, he was a horny dude and, he paid. So I'm not buying into the DNA evidence. We have no proof. That's why it's hotly debated, obviously, but then there's the theory that Jack the Ripper was actually a member of the British royal family. According to this theory, Prince Albert Victor, the grandson of Queen Victoria, was involved in the murders, and the royal cover-up was orchestrated to protect her family. Though this theory has been largely debunked and remains one of the most sensational ideas surrounding the case. Other suspects include Sir William Gall, the Queen Victorian's physician, Walter Sickert, a famous artist who some believe left clues about the murders in his paintings, and even the possibility that Jack the Ripper was a woman, a theory known as Jill the Ripper. For each of these suspects has compelling points of evidence and gaping holes in their stories, which is why the mystery of Jack the Ripper endures. The question remains, why was Jack the Ripper never caught? Part of the answer lies in the limitations of 19th century police work. The concept of forensic science was in its infancy. There were no fingerprints, no crime scene protocols, no methods for tracking a serial killer. The chaos of Whitechapel itself also contributed to the Ripper's ability to evade capture. With its labyrinth of dark alleyways and overcrowded streets, it was the perfect setting for a killer to strike and vanish into the shadows. And finally, the fear and panic in the community made it difficult for police to separate real clues from false leads. There were simply too many suspects, too many conflicting witness reports, and too few solid pieces of evidence. Jack the Ripper's legacy endures, not just because of the brutality of his crimes, but because of the mystery that still surrounds him. He's become an icon of fear and intrigue, inspiring countless books, movies, TV shows, and even walking tours through the streets of Whitechapel. The Ripper murders changed the way we think about crime and criminals. His case was one of the first instances of modern media frenzy surrounding a serial killer, and his ability to evade capture forced law enforcement to rethink how they approached violent crime. In many ways, Jack the Ripper marked the birth of the modern serial killer in popular culture. But perhaps the most significant part of Jack the Ripper's legacy is the question he leaves with us. More than 130 years after his reign of terror, we still don't know who he was. Despite advances in forensic science and years of investigation by both police and amateur sleuths, Jack the Ripper remains a phantom, an unsolved mystery that continues to haunt public imagination. So, will we ever know the true identity of Jack the Ripper? Perhaps. New theories and evidence continue to emerge, but until we have definitive proof, the Ripper will remain one of the greatest unsolved mysteries in criminal history. In the end, Jack the Ripper is more than just a killer. He's a symbol of fear, of the unknown, and of the darker side of humanity. His story reminds us that even in the most crowded streets, the darkest secrets can remain hidden. Thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed this dive into one of history's most chilling cases, don't forget to like, subscribe, hit that bell icon, that way you're notified whenever we upload new videos. Let us know in the comments, who do you think the Ripper might have been? Until next time, stay safe, stay curious. So, just an aside. I'm sure you've noticed in the past couple of videos that we've kind of veered away from paranormal, or we're taking a step back from cryptids. We're starting to cover more true crime stuff. The Hammersmith ghost, for one, or Hammersmith murder, for one, because that's what it ended up being, like an actual murder. Even though the dude was accused of murder and sentenced to death, and then it was later acquitted to hard labor for a while. He was still, found guilty of murder because he did murder somebody. And then we got Spring Heel Jack, who, while he didn't murder somebody, was still a criminal. He still attacked people pretty brutally, by jumping around on them, throwing fire at them and stuff like that. So we are getting more into true crime. I'm kind of taking a step back from the paranormal, from debunking videos and stuff like that. There's been some things in the community here lately that I don't really agree with, that I don't really gel with. I don't like the divide that is coming up in the I guess, debunking side of the community. I don't understand why we are attacking other members in the community. That's just how I see it. I see it as somebody was attacked and they didn't need to be attacked. It is what it is. I'm not going to say more about it. I don't think that it should have been done to begin with, but it is what it is. So for that reason, among many others, I'm taking a step back from the debunking community. It's not really that big of a shock, I don't think. I haven't really felt like I belonged here since I got brought into it. But, you know, it is what it is. Anyways, guys, if you like what we do here, you want to support the channel, you can always... there's merch link down below. You can buy some pretty dope merch. There's also a PayPal link up above. That way you can directly support the channel. Everything donated through PayPal goes right back into the channel. That way I can keep all of this kind of stuff going. And I will see you guys next time. Peace out.